It is December 11th, 2021, 4 days after infamy. This is my first video for YouTube after being released from federal prison. I am walking around in a federal halfway house where I am confined, at least today, and I am showing you this simply because a picture of my face is not very interesting. Now, there's a great thing. This is the cheapest possible cell phone you can buy at Walmart. It's 20 bucks, and it does YouTube videos, which I have found are better than a university for the most part. Now, this is about a video I just saw. It's about Wittgenstein and his famous utterance, "This is a very pleasant pineapple." The video was kind of dramatic, hokily acted, and focused most on what an unpleasant person Wittgenstein was, but I'm going to talk about the sentence and analyze it. First of all, people actually do analyze sentences in sequence with a limited degree of memory. It works a little bit like an LALR1T parser, but is incredibly more sophisticated. And of course, Noam Chomsky was wrong. The process of parsing and understanding relies heavily on meaning, some of it semantic, but most of it pragmatic. So the sentence starts off with, "This is a." This, of course, is a deictic pronoun. It sets up the expectation that it will refer to something. Is the copula, which is a very interesting verb, which I'll get to eventually, and is the indefinite article. So that "this is sets up a deictic phrase which causes an expectation that will have an indefinite thing coming up to fill in. Very is where it starts to be interesting. Now, if it were a verb other than is, very could apply to it. Perhaps I could say, "I walk very slowly." Well, the very sets up an expectation for another adverb, as it is so called approximately, but it applies to the verb, it applies to the action. However, in this case, is doesn't really give us a lot of information, so we don't know what to make of very. So we set up an expectation in our brains that an adjective is going to follow. And the adjective follows immediately, and this is why adjectives tend to follow immediately or come immediately before in various languages that have adjectives. Some don't. Pleasant. So we say it's not only pleasant, it's very pleasant. Okay, so what is going to be pleasant? Due to the Hebbian connections in the brain, what happens is the activation potential, so to speak, of all our pleasant experiences, or all the pleasant experiences we've imagined by looking at books, are put into a state where it is easier to make them fire. And then we see pineapple. Now, what happens there is that pineapple also reduces the action potentials of various neural clusters that we have about eating pineapples. Well, we don't know it's eating, but pineapple evokes the, some people call them frames, some people call them idealized cognitive models. I call them stories, where it's eating a pineapple. And if we've never actually had a pineapple, we can imagine, well, if we know that a pineapple is a fruit, we may have had pleasant experiences of eating fruit. If we hadn't had those experiences, we would only know something very, very abstract about the sentence, and in a way, not be able to understand it. Although we might be able to imagine it based on other pleasant experiences that we have had. So pineapple simply evokes these ICMs, or whatever you want to call them, and then the brain searches for what could be pleasant, not about the pineapple, but about the experience of eating the pineapple in the ICM or whatever you want to call it. And we immediately have this embodied sensation of eating a very pleasant pineapple. The first thing that happened to me is that I salivated a little bit because I like pineapples. Also, somebody brought a pineapple into the halfway house, and I thought, yum. So now we understand the sentence. We know how pleasant refers to pineapple in some way. It's through the ICM. And we have pragmatic meaning. But we still don't have any real semantic meaning. In order to have semantic meaning, we have to be able to have had experiences with unpleasant pineapples, and they exist. And for example, pineapples tend to cause indigestion in many people because they have enzymes that break down meat, including your meat. And that is not a pleasant experience. Take it from somebody who's had pancreatitis. It's really not very pleasant. And so we could contrast a pleasant pineapple from an unpleasant pineapple. Now this is interesting because we have a category of a pleasant pineapple and a category of an unpleasant pineapple, and that gives us a semantic meaning. Now, how are these categories formed? As George Lakoff points out, the classical categorization of a category as being a set defined by the presence of particular attributes is wrong. He proposed prototype-based categories, including radial categories. Now, my belief is even this is not good enough. And what you also need is from Saussurian linguistics, because Saussurian linguistics, and especially the branch that turned into post-structuralism and postmodernism, will give you the concept of defining categories in terms of differences rather than similarities, or what Wittgenstein called family resemblances. For some reason, none of the cognitive linguists seem to be able to appreciate Saussurian, semiotic, structuralist, post-structuralist, postmodernist linguistics, except for Hilary Putnam. And they don't even recognize who Hilary Putnam is, even though he uses the shibboleth word sign to describe this. Now, in prison, I spent the first year of the plague trying to write a book. I had to throw it away because you can only take a certain amount out of prison, on why it is that cognitive linguists who are post-Chomskyan, Chomsky, of course, thought that syntax was primary, and he's an idiot, and he was an idiot. And I mean that in the technical sense of Heraclitus's distinction between the idios cosmos and the koinos cosmos. The idios cosmos is internal, and it results from people probably who are child prodigies and never grow up, because they always think that their first idea is the smartest possible idea and they don't listen to anybody else. Chomsky himself admitted that he did not have the college experience, and that is what the college experience is for. It's not about learning things. You can learn things anywhere, but in college you are forced to be exposed to people who might have better ideas than you. And if you analyze Chomsky's linguistics and his politics, there's just no conception of that possibility. He's like Descartes or Aristotle. But I digress. I want to say that this work is due almost exclusively to the very fine people at the Lucy Parsons bookstore. They have the oldest free books to prisoners project in the world. And I want especially to thank Ellen and Lee. Unfortunately, they never sent me any Wittgenstein, though they did send me Lakoff and Austin and Cavell. And so I've had to come back to this what I laughingly call the real world to find out something really about Wittgenstein. Now, I'm going to point out this. I'm allowed to have this cell phone, but there's a possibility that as of March 2022, I may not be permitted to do anything on the internet for the rest of my life. Maybe I will. There is a case that I can't remember the name of it right now that went to the Supreme Court because they tried that jiggery pokery in North Carolina, and the Supreme Court said no, but judges ignore the Supreme Court all the ding-dong day. This is your country. Welcome to it. And if you ever had the ability to vote, you are responsible.